Buenos días a todos. Es un honor
Good morning,
darles la bienvenida
everybody. It's an honor to welcome you to the World Olive Day 2024. This is a special day. We celebrate the Mediterranean diet every once in a while. This is a symbol of a diet which showcases health benefits, but also sustainability and the conservation of our heritage. We are meeting here today in this wonderful premise, the Research Institute, and we are supposed to provide food for thought, to see what we have done in the field of research, olive oil, the Mediterranean diet, and the challenges that I had in order to improve dissemination of all of the wonderful message for the future. In order to make it easier for you to participate, we should like to remind you of the following on the QR code that you have in the material of this event. You can consult the entire program for this very special day. However, we would like to report to you what the following. There are some last-minute changes, and the Minister for Agriculture and Ms. Lucia Delfino, the chair of the Spanish National Research Center, cannot participate in this event as they would have wished. They expressed their regret and tender their apologies for not being here in person. I would also like to tell you that we have simultaneous interpretation into English, French, and Spanish in order to make sure that everybody will be able to follow the speeches and presentations. It is an honor for me to submit the distinguished speakers. First of all, I would like to ask the Vice Chair of the Spanish National Research Council to introduce the subject on behalf of CSIC.
Buenos días a todos y en primer lugar,
Good morning,
bienvenidos
everybody. First of all, welcome to CSIC, the Spanish National Research Council. This is the House of Science. I wish to welcome Begonia for Fisheries Agriculture, the delegate of Iran, Jaime Lillo, the Executive Director of the International Olive Council, and all the authorities that are present here. Thank you all for being here, distinguished and experts, attendees. As I said, first of all, I should like to apologize for Luisa Delfino, our chair, who regrets not to be here sharing this wonderful day with you. And it is an honor for me to welcome you here at the Spanish National Research Council to commemorate the Olive Day. CSIC is proud to go hand in hand with the IOC in this celebration, reconfirming our commitment to research, innovation, and scientific dissemination, all for a sustainable diet. In 1993, experts in food and agriculture established the pyramid of the Mediterranean diet, which is healthy. You might agree with me, I'm sure, that this is the way we need to understand nutrition. This milestone is exceptional because it makes it possible for us to study the impact of all this on our lives and to acknowledge the work of the pioneers, the ones who led the way. And as we are going to showcase today, the international scientific community, including this council, has taken a closer look at the Mediterranean diet, how it protects our health. And CSIC is now 80 years old, and it is the major research forum in Spain and Europe. We have over 120 institutes, and we cover a lot of ground: natural science, social science, human sciences. Our DNA is clear-cut. We need to provide science to society, to all of society. Olive oil and Mediterranean diet play a major role. I would like to showcase the Instituto de la Gracia de Sevilla, where major progress was made in the chemical composition of olive oil and working on polyphenols that are very beneficial for human health. And this has greatly contributed to better understand the work of these ingredients in the Mediterranean diet. These findings that are the fruit of decades' work have been and have shown how up to 30% of cardiovascular disease can be reduced because of the intake of olive oil. And Mr. Force, who is director of the Instituto de la Grasa, will share with us their views on the Mediterranean diet, providing us with a major approach, a global approach to the kind of quality that we should safeguard. But apart from the Instituto de la Grasa, other centers, the Biological Institute in the north of Spain and other institutions are undertaking major research to provide the sustainability of all this. I will give you some examples. We are mitigating the water deficit with innovation in order to make it possible for plants to resist drought, and also how we can improve what happens when you have cognitive disease. And there is something that I am mentioning as an example, but CSIC also relies on innovation. Companies that are based on knowledge, and they work on this in order to get the right message across, the right scientific message across in this field. These initiatives reflect our commitment with the transfer of technology and increased value, enhanced value for society. But there are global challenges: climate change, more sustainable production system, and the Mediterranean diet is a model to be followed on the basis of our research in many fields, how to improve resistance to drought and water deficit stress. We are considering the possibility of guaranteeing this heritage to future generations. But our work takes all this a step further than just laboratories. We have international cooperation to show for this, and in our cooperation with international partners, and with them we have developed new avenues in this field. A stark example: research on new olive varieties that are more resistant and crops that will work on water deficits better. We would like to disseminate the Mediterranean diet as a scientific and cultural heritage. We have also had a say and played a role in politics and the good policies for all this at a European level. And we work in Spain and outside of Spain. We have cooperated with the IOC, the International Olive Council, and we have worked for the benefit of producers, consumers, and guaranteeing the quality of olive oil in global markets. As I said at the beginning, we have had this Mediterranean diet for over 30 years, and we admit that this is not only a nutritional tool, it is science, culture, sustainability all together, and they can merge in order to improve our lives. And here in the House of Science, we have a unique opportunity to ensure that science is always a bridge between tradition and innovation. On behalf of this institution, I would like to thank our international partners. We are developing with them this initiative. The fact that they're here with us shows their interest, their keen interest, and I'm sure that together we can work on this heritage that we need to safeguard and guarantee for the future. And I'm convinced that today's work is going to be a major milestone in our work, in our road. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Vice President. It's a privilege to also have Mr. Teodoro Miano with us. He's the General Secretary of the International Center of Mediterranean Studies, and I will invite him up to the podium to address us.
Good morning to everybody. I'm sorry I will speak in English. Madame Begoña Garcia Bernal, Secretary of State of the Ministry of Agriculture, His Excellency Mohamed Bouroumandi, Deputy Minister of Agriculture of Iran, Mrs. Castro, Vice President of Spanish National Research Council, Mr. Javad Mirabad, President of the International Olive Council, and Mr. Jaime Lillo, Executive Director of the International Olive Council. Ambassadors, authorities, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very proud to be here today to participate in this opening session of this meeting. CIAM is the organization representing and cardiovascular diseases, which indicates a shift away from the healthy Mediterranean diet. And this is driven by lifestyle changes, globalization, the abandonment of traditional food practice. And again, the issue of food security is concerning also aspect of food loss and wastes. We also observe strong inequalities in the system and increased disparities related to for example, youth unemployment, which is a major concern in the region, women and girls marginalization due to structural barriers and limited access to resources and opportunities, and mainly the gap between rural and urban areas. In addition, issues like migration will present challenges on our food system, as we may imagine. Since 2010, SIAM and FAO have collaborated on a program focusing on the sustainability of the food production and consumption in Mediterranean, using the Mediterranean diet as a case study. This program is based on 4 pillars of sustainability, which is reduced environmental impact, biodiversity, health and nutrition benefits, socio-cultural values, and positive economic returns from the community. SIAM has actively contributed to the discourse on the Mediterranean diet through the publication of numerous reports and articles, often in collaboration with several international partners. Furthermore, SIAM has played a key role in organizing and co-organizing 3 world conferences dedicated to Mediterranean diet. The first one in Milan in July 2016 on healthy dietary pattern, the second on sustainable food system in Palermo in 2019, and the third one in Bari in towards sustainable and resilient food system in Mediterranean. So SIAM actively promotes sustainable Mediterranean food systems, and particularly the Mediterranean diet. One example is our SFS, Sustainable Food System MED platform, developed together institutions like UPM, FAO, and now the Prima Foundation. This partnership leverages the combined strength to foster collaboration, engage diverse stakeholders, drive transformation change towards sustainable food systems in the Mediterranean region, and possibly attract greater support from donors and international financial institutions. The Mediterranean diet, as an healthy and sustainable model, plays a pivotal role in achieving these goals and advancing the 2030 agenda in the region. In this context, olive oil, especially extra virgin olive oil, is a cornerstone of the Mediterranean diet. Its unique composition and high temperature resistance make it ideal for both cooking and flavor enhancement. Olive oil health benefits include cardiovascular disease prevention and potential cancer risk reduction. Its widespread use in traditional Mediterranean cuisine amplifies the nutritional value of meats. While intensification can negatively impact the environment, sustainable farming practices and support from traditional methods can mitigate these effects. Olive orchards provide benefits like preventing desertification and acting as carbon sinks, but it's crucial to identify and minimize the environmental impacts of certain production phases. SIAM recent research and cooperation efforts have expanded beyond agricultural production to focus on the sustainability of the entire food systems, encompassing the processing, the distribution, the marketing, and the consumption of food. This approach enables a deeper understanding of the challenges in ensuring food and nutritional security. Sustainable food systems are essential for achieving the UN Sustainable Development Goals and are a prerequisite for food and nutrition security, as well as social, economic, and environmental sustainability in the Mediterranean region. The current unsustainable food system in the Mediterranean are contributing to the erosion of the regional cultural food heritage, which is the foundation of the Mediterranean diet's inscription on UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage List. In conclusion, the Mediterranean diet stands as a beacon of sustainability, offering a pathway to address the pressing challenges of our food systems. By embracing its principle of frugality, seasonality, and locally sourced ingredients, we can foster a healthier and more sustainable future for the Mediterranean region and beyond. SIAM remains committed to promoting Mediterranean diet and its values, working towards a food system that nourishes both people and the planet. And before I finish, I really like to mention that we feel the IOC community, this international community, as our community, as part, it's practically a family, and we plastically show that if you look at the very small symbol of Siam at the end of the picture, in the heart of the symbol, we have an olive oil tree. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Secretary General. We will now hear from Mr. Jaime Lillo, Executive Director of the International Olive Council. He will address us representing that organization.
Good morning, everybody. Spanish Secretary of State of Agriculture and Food, María Begoña García Bernal, thank you for being with us today. Vice President of the International Relations of the CSIC, Anna, thank you for welcoming in the House of Science. Secretary General of CIAM, thank you very much, Mr. Miano, for your words. And ambassadors, members of the diplomatic corps, members of the advisory committee, delegations of the IOC, speakers, people from the research institutions and colleagues. Good morning to everybody and welcome to the celebration of the World Olive Tree Day that was recognized by UNESCO in 2019 to recognize this olive tree branch as a symbol of peace, wisdom, and harmony since ancient times. This is a day also to promote the cultivation of the olive trees as a cultural and natural heritage. And it's also a day to reinforce the importance of the social, cultural, economic, and environmental significance of the olive tree to the humanity. Those words that I read, they are taken from the declaration of UNESCO, and I read it because I think they are very much in line with the values of the International Olive Council, the only intergovernmental organization which is promoting the sustainability cultivation of the olive trees since 65 years ago, when it was created under the auspices of United Nations. Yesterday we celebrate our 120th session of members, and we welcome the membership of Bosnia and Herzegovina. I want to thank you, the ambassador, her presence today, and also coming back of Lebanon and one of our members of our family, and this makes together 21 members, including the European Union, with 27 countries. So it means 47 countries being part of what we call this olive oil family, and we are all here celebrating and dedicating this day to the 30th anniversary of the publication of the Mediterranean Diet Pyramid. And we have the honor to do it with the authors, with the people and institutions which were directly involved in this historical momentum for the nutrition and health, when they create and they publicate this symbol that has been recognized and make the final contribution or recognition worldwide of the benefits for human health of the Mediterranean diet, but also the recognition of how natural and traditional food can be essential in the public health strategies. So I want to express my sincere gratitude to the speakers of today. They are maybe among the brilliant minds in our times. They are very big people in the world of science, and there are those metrics to reference and publication, and they are very, very high, and they are devoting their time to very generously to speak about the Mediterranean diet today with us. We also, it was said by Teodoro before, the olive oil, the olive tree is not only providing and I'm gonna take some words from Walter Willett from a conference that we organized the Greg organized in the Vatican, and he told me, no, they are the healthiest calories. The healthiest calories that can be naturally provided, no, and it's not only providing the healthiest calories to feed the population. The olive tree is also protecting the soils from erosion. The olive trees are a natural barrier to desertification in many areas of the Mediterranean and other parts of the world. They are a shelter for biodiversity, and they are cleaning the air. We have more than 11 million hectares of olive trees that are acting as a domesticated forest, contributing to the fight against climate change. The olive tree is part of the strategy of how to feed a growing population in a healthy and sustainable manner, and this will be developed today in the conference. And I just would like to conclude. Thank you, all of you, for sharing this celebration with us, and we hope that this event serves to inspire greater awareness and recognition to the benefits of the Mediterranean diet. Thank you all for your attention.
Thank you very much, Executive Director. Now it's an honor to receive Mr. Mohammed Borhamandi, who is Vice Minister of Agriculture of Iran, and he will be addressing us in Persian, but you will have interpretation in English, French, and Spanish. In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful, ladies and gentlemen, greetings and good morning to you all. I am pleased to be among you on this special day, and I extend the warm greetings of His Excellency Dr. Nouri, the esteemed Minister of Agriculture of the Islamic Republic of Iran, to all of you present. I congratulate all of you who appreciate this blessed fruit on Olive Day, celebrating this sacred tree, a symbol of peace in the world. I would like to express my gratitude to my colleagues at the International Olive Council, Executive Director Mr. Jaime Lillo, the National Research Council of Spain, and the International Center for Advanced Mediterranean Agronomic Studies, the CIHAM, for this distinguished program. It is well known that food security has always been one of the most significant challenges humanity faces. Various nations have been striving to enhance their food security levels. Climate change is one of the atmospheric phenomena that has recently affected food security in all societies. Optimizing the use of water and soil under these climate change conditions must be part of a comprehensive strategy by governments to meet the nutritional needs of households, particularly low-income groups. Moreover, the deep impact of food on public health is another essential and strategic objective for societies today. If quantitative and qualitative improvements in production are not achieved in countries experiencing the significant climate changes, insecurity and rising healthcare costs will become social issues threatening governance. The olive is one of the oldest known plants and an important food source. It plays a crucial role in human health and energy supply by providing essential oil and fats, calories. Some scholars believe that the olive originated in the Mediterranean region and surrounding countries and spread to other areas. In 2005, the Food and Agricultural Organization, FAO, stated that the knowledge and practice of olive propagation by cuttings were transferred from Iran to other regions, underscoring the significance of such historical events that have now brought this important gathering together. The olive tree, a valuable symbol of peace and friendship throughout history, represents unity, understanding, and cooperation for Mediterranean civilizations and the world at large. Olive oil, produced through fruit processing, meets the part of nutritional needs of people and contributes to the treatment of various diseases and the overall health of society. Thus, expanding olive cultivation while maintaining product quality increases its importance in ensuring public health and food security. The Islamic Republic of Iran is committed to the planned development of olives, prioritizing both qualitative and quantitative expansion and improving oil quality. This approach aims to promote oil consumption to enhance public health, incorporating olive oil into the food basket to prevent diseases and reduce medical expenses. In conclusion, I express my sincere gratitude to all those who contributed significantly to organizing this event. I also extend my thanks to Vice Minister of Spain, Mrs. Maria Begoña, a friendly country, and on behalf of His Excellency Dr. Nouri, Minister of Agriculture of the Islamic Republic of Iran, I cordially invite His Excellency Minister to visit the Islamic Republic of Iran to witness its agriculture and food capacities. Iran is a significant country in agriculture and food with unique conditions, encompassing 11 out of the 13 global climates and leading in the production of various agricultural products in the region. Thanks a lot from my ambassador of Iran, Mr. Zabib. That effort in here a lot and relate the International Olive Council.
ماریا بگونا قائم مقام محترم کشاورزی کشور دوست اسپانیا تشکر میکنم و از محضر شریف ایشان دعوت میکنم تا از ظرفیت‌های کشاورزی و غذایی در ایران دیدن نمایند، زیرا ایران کشور مهمی است. در حوزه‌های کشاورزی و غذایی بسیار مهم است و شرایط منحصر به فردی را دارد، به طوری که 11 اقلیم از 13 اقلیم جهان را در خود جای داده و در تولید انواع محصولات کشاورزی سرآمد منطقه است. منتظر حضور ارزشمند شما در جمهوری اسلامی ایران هستم. از حضور بسیار ارزشمند جناب آقای خملیو، از حضور ارزشمند سفرای محترم و همینطور سفیر محترم جمهوری اسلامی ایران جناب آقای دکتر زبیب که نقش بسیار مهمی در تعامل کشورم با شورای بین‌المللی زیتون را دارند و ایفا می‌نمایند تشکر می‌کنم. برای همه عزیزان آرزوی توفیق دارم.
Wishing success to everyone.
Muchas gracias, señor.
Thank you very much, Vice Minister. And finally, it's an honor for us to introduce Ms. Magdalena Begoña García Bernal, who is Secretary of State for Agriculture. She will close this opening session.
Buenos días a
Good morning to everyone, to all of the authorities who are here. And first and foremost, I would like to tender our Minister Planas' excuse. His schedule did not enable him to be here today. He had an engagement that arose at the last minute, and he's very sorry about that. I am pleased to be here, and not only to be in our House of Science, the CSIC, but also because we're here thanks to olive oil and olives. I am from Extremadura. We have many olive groves, traditional olive groves in the mountains, on slopes. And it is not only important for environmental sustainability, but also for social sustainability. And also because traditional olive trees in my land, in Extremadura, is a barrier against wildfire. It saves our villages from being overrun by wildfires. I wanted to mention that this World Olive Day coincides with the commemoration of the 30th anniversary of the Mediterranean Diet Pyramid. And it's very important because of the high scientific level of the speakers we have today to talk about that on World Olive Day, a day that reminds us of how important it is to protect this crop and also protect its values, the values of peace, wisdom, and harmony that the tree represents. Peace and food security are part of the same scope of activities, very unfortunately right now, because wars generate pernicious effects on the flow of food and threaten us with scarcity, particularly the most vulnerable people, particularly women and girls. This is why food security is one of our most pressing challenges. In addition, the value of an olive tree, of olive trees overall, as a symbol of peace, enable us to remember peace, landscape, and also a very important nourishment. We've amassed a great amount of research to see just how beneficial this is for health, and this can become extensive of the entire Mediterranean diet, where the presence of olive oil sets this diet apart. And this is considered the pattern of eating and lifestyle overall that is healthiest. The World Health Organization and FAO and other international organizations attest to this. Olive oil and olives prevent disease, and it is therefore important for youth and children to continue in this tradition. Health and the pleasure of good eating come hand in hand in this Mediterranean diet, and olive oil is a significant element. It has significant healthy qualities that are scientifically recognized, and we will be talking about this in today's conference. Our ministry is striving to disseminate the high quality of our olive oils and also make its nutritional healthy properties known. This is our goal, both in our Alimentos de España, Foods of Spain strategy, or Spain Food Nation, another initiative, or our work with our trading partners who export. We have recent research that has proven that the Mediterranean diet contributes to preventing diseases, and this comes hand in hand with the consumption of olive oil. Olive oil is one of the few foods that has several authorized mentions in terms of healthy eating in the European Union. An association of producers founded in Spain recently requested of the EFSA a health claim for virgin olive oil. Thus, Spain has become a pioneer in requesting a claim for olive oil. If this is approved, it will be the first statement of reducing of disease that has been authorized for olive oil. But the Mediterranean diet and olive oil are also people and also women. Right now in Andalusia, in the province of Jaén, where my friend's father is working and harvesting the fruit of the work and effort of a whole crop year. We're not only talking about magnificent products and how to nourish ourselves healthily. We're also talking about our farmers, be they men or women. They have a lot to say about that quality and good work. And please allow me to highlight women's role in this process. Recognizing their important function is a question of justice, but it's also a matter of intelligence, because they've always been key players and they're imperatively present in driving the transformation of oil production and farming overall. Specifically in olive farms, women have taken the reins of research, sales, distribution, industry, and very especially entrepreneuring, where women are driving forward creative, innovative, unique initiatives. They are leading projects that do not only elevate the quality of olive oil and its possibilities for production and its applications, they also open up new opportunities both for local markets and international markets. This increasingly preeminent role of women in tasting panels, in marketing panels, in quality panels, women are offering a renewed outlook, and their leadership translates into new approaches that highlight the benefits of extra virgin olive oil and stimulate its appreciation on the market worldwide. And this is why I believe that it's very much in place to highlight the added value that women have and continue to contribute here in Spain. And they are the backbone of rural societies. We women are the ones who ensure that people remain out on the farms. And we must introduce the consumption of the Mediterranean diet in the debate on healthy, sustainable diets that has begun in FAO, and it will soon begin in the European Union when our legislature in Europe begins finally at the 1st of the month, on the 1st of December, and we have an outstanding representative in the new commission, Ms. Teresa Rivera. So this all goes through our national food strategy. On Monday, the 25th of November, we are concluding the participatory phase of this strategy, in which the Mediterranean diet and olive oil plays a fundamental role. We also want to impact in supranational fora. So without further ado, I will leave you to enjoy this wonderful day that will be very fruitful for all of us. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Secretary of State. Before we continue, we'll take a few minutes so that Ms. Maria Begoña Garcia can leave us. She has an agenda waiting for her. Thank you very much.
A continuación,
we will now have a whole set of presentations on the evolution and the benefits of the Mediterranean diet pyramid. Mr. Raúl Gómez, Director of SIAM Zaragoza, is going to refer to all of you. Thank you.
Good morning. It's a pleasure for me to be here with you as a presenter of the second part, if you want, the technical scientific part of this session. For me, as director of the CIAN Zaragoza, it is the headquarters of the CIAN in Spain, is a real pleasure, in fact, because we have a special relation with the CSIC. We have an agreement of cooperation with the CSIC, and we collaborate a lot with the International Olive Council. We organize together with the University of Córdoba, the Andalusian government, and other entities a master in olive oil production. And we organize with the IOC2 every year at least one or two specialized advanced courses. So I am the pleasure to be the moderator of one session where it's going to participate some of the most prominent scientific in the world about the Mediterranean diet. Let me introduce a little bit this session, telling that although this diet has a millennial-old tradition, it was not properly recognized until a group of leading nutrition scientists and public health experts, food and cultural scholars began to investigate the patterns of traditional Mediterranean diet circa 1960s. This effort, building on the earlier pioneering work of Professor Ansel Keys and his 7 countries study, and led by the world-renowned institutions such as the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, Department of Nutrition, and the World Health Organization, in collaboration with Always Preservation and Exchange Trust, culminated in a series of conferences and papers that established the healthy traditional Mediterranean diet pyramid, recognized worldwide. Well, to start with these conferences, I am going to introduce you to Professor Enrique Martínez Orce. Enrique, I'm going to introduce you in Spanish, so one moment if you want. Es profesor de investigación del Consejo Superior de Investigaciones Científicas. Es el actual director.
He is the current director of the Instituto de la Grasa. He has a doctorate from the University of Sevilla. He has focused on the metabolism of vegetable lipids or plant lipids, and he has worked on biosynthetic synthetic groups of lipids. His international recognition in the field of plant lipids and his work with the main areas has led him to work on international projects with a great degree of excellency. He's participated in many scientific committees, and we've asked Enrique to take a maximum of 15 minutes to tell us the history of the CSIC's research on olive oil. You have the floor, sir.
Muchas gracias, Raúl, por tu introducción.
Thank you very much for that introduction. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen and distinguished authorities, as the Vice Chair said, the Spanish National Research Council
Va un poquito lento.
This moves a bit slowly, I'm sorry for that. The Spanish National Research Council is the main agent responsible for implementing the Spanish system for science, technology, and innovation, and one of the most prominent is the European Research Area, and the seventh at world level. It is affiliated to the Ministry of Science, Innovation, and University through the Secretary General of Research. And there are three main areas covering all the areas that we denominate society, life, and matter. And CSIC has a great deal to say in this connection. But with regard to olive oil, first and foremost, because it covers the main olive growing areas in Spain, but also because it has a great number of publications worldwide on research. The CSIC has covered a great deal of research. I'm sorry, I'm getting the wrong slides. The CSIC covered everything under olive oil. Many subjects, many issues, processes and sustainability with regard to the processing of olive oil and the quality and authenticity and its effects on nutrition and health, social studies, dissemination, and education. The institutes are the ones that we see here: the Instituto de la Grasa Sevilla, Córdoba Institute, Granada Institute, the Natural Resources in Seville, and Murcia, Applied Science in Madrid, Horticulture in Malaga, and Madrid Institute on Agronomics. These institutes break down into three main areas: the processing of food and so on. Historically, we can say that the starting point in studying olive oil was a decision taken by this institute to set up the Spanish National Research Council to work on olive oil and industry, the Instituto de la Grasa Seville. From the very beginning, they studied the processing of olive oil and the characterization thereof. In 1952, we completed the building that hosted it up until later when it is in a new building in Seville. Today, most of the publications of SIC come from this institute, and this is the research center with the greatest number of publications on this issue worldwide. With regard to olive growing, the Institute has worked on agronomy, olive tree physiology, the entomology, olive oil quality, genetic improvement, and the study of conversing the biodiversity of olive trees. Let me give you some examples of these studies. I would mention the physiology of the olive tree with regard to water deficit, how it responds, and the genes in the olive, and that is studied very closely, and how to have somatic sides and effects. And intensive growing, this is something that we have studied very closely as well. And the Córdoba Institute has played a major role in this. I would also like to mention the studies on the diseases of the olive tree, the olive fly, Xylella, and the Institute of Sustainable Agriculture at the Institute of Food Science in Madrid, and the characterization by the Institute in Galicia for native varieties and the other diseases that have been studied and listed here. Let us take a step back and go back to Seville to talk about the processing of olive oil. The Instituto de la Grasa in 1959 opened the pilot plants that include a modern experimental oil mill. That is a project that was studied very closely, and it is a reference point for all the world. And this refers to research and education. Apart from the changes of the machinery for processing, what we see is the coadjuvant in the extraction. The Institute also has an extraction machinery in order to study all the machinery that has to do with olive oil, processing and sustainability. This is what was focused on how to optimize extraction, better refining with with lesser use of chemical compounds to help in these processes. Let me give you some examples of this, and considering the objectives, modifying the processing conditions that improve sensory quality, achieving zero waste in industrial oil mills, and innovate the extraction system to improve its industrial production. All this means that we have a phenols process which aims to obtain extra virgin olive oil with a greater amount of antioxidants, beneficial compounds in health, thanks to the use of new extraction techniques and the use of olive biomass in order to avoid chemicals in the water, and also to have phenolic extraction yields, to improve extraction yields. The characterization and assessment of the quality of olive oil is a process which is of the essence to guarantee its authenticity, purity, and organoleptic properties. In order to do this, in 1954, the External Analysis Unit was established at the IGCSIC to provide service to the industrial sector, centers, and official bodies in the characterization, quality, and purity of edible fats and oils. This slide shows one of the analytical methods that are internationally agreed and accepted, together with the institutions from France and Italy. the knowledge that we have on oils and the analytical methods proposed mean that our researchers are members of many expert panels that work out international regulations. Well, the Instituto de la Grasa in the 1980s, the decade of 1980-1990, built the largest chemical database on olive oil in the world. Relevant data when it comes to determine the authenticity of oils and how to avoid any possible fraud. As I said, these techniques give us a great characterization, but it also makes it possible to detect contaminants in oils as the ones that have been recognized. And what we are worried about now most, MOSH and MOA, mineral oil hydrocarbons. We need to quantify these, and the state-of-the-art technology is working on this detection, quantification, and characterization. This means that our research detects fraud, and we can do better. We can see when there are mislabeled oils and they're not sold as the way they should be sold. When consumers are not familiar with the differences between different types of olive oil, fraudulent practices become more prevalent. For example, there are blends with slightly deodorized olive oils. When we refer to quality, we should not forget that the category of an olive oil is determined by its organoleptic properties. The Instituto de la Grasa opened the way in developing a sensory panel in 1960, and ever since 1982 it participated with the IUC in developing regulations in order to determine the organoleptic properties of olive oil. The Instituto de la Grasa has a modern tasting panel and the best people in the sector in these panels. The aroma of olive oil is not simple. It is determined by many volatile compounds, and this is what I'm showing you in this slide. And the tasters must recognize these. There are many samples to be analyzed, and the great number of existing panels meant that IUC has requested analytical methods to support the work of panels. The Instituto de la Grasa not only developed the electronic olfactory side, but also worked on the smell of the oil and the defects that tasters have to distinguish. This has led to developing something else, a whole set of sensory analysis that means that the categories of oils and the grades of oils can be clearly identified and detected, and they also focus on borderline oils. When we refer to our olive oil, we should not forget nutrition and health. Olive oil has a particular fatty acid composition rich in the monounsaturated oleic acid, and virgin olive oil and extra virgin olive oil also have minor components, about 2%, including phytosterols, tocopherols, and biophenols. During some time, the high content of monounsaturated fatty acids was accountable for the protective effects of olive oil. In 1995, researchers also studied an essay and conducted an essay and a study with the nuns of the convent of Santa Paula in Seville, who were almost all overweight and have problems in obesity. After that study, the same researchers participated in other studies working on the Mediterranean diet. After that, there were other studies, the pre-dined study, and that's focused on oleanolic acid, which prevents type 2 diabetes in at-risk individuals. That success led to two more studies, Abril study and the Ogret study, where we have olive oil supplemented with oleanoic acid may be effective as an adjuvant to drug therapy against it. There are another two studies that are ongoing, Cordial and Neurolea, to study olipamisole and AO studies in relation with Alzheimer. Well, there are other minor components of olive oils, oleocanthal and oleacin in the APO study, or hydroxytyrosol in other studies. To conclude, I would like to mention some studies that refer to society, which is also included in our studies. For example, a report on the research and innovation on olive oil in Spain, the priorities of other studies published in 2011 for the Olive Grove platform, or the marketing of the oils from Andalusia, and the Instituto de la Grasa is also in charge of publishing many useful studies. These studies of the Institute go hand in hand with education. That is started in 1961 with a course which covered 31 editions and led to a master's of the University of Córdoba, Jaén, or Seville. In summary, CSIC research has contributed to increase the production and quality of Spanish olive oil, to strengthen the competitiveness of the Spanish olive sector at an international level, to promote the consumption of olive oil as healthy food, and preserve the Spanish olive heritage. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Enrique. Let's continue our session, technical session. We are going to start that we call the segment, the popularization of the Mediterranean dietary pyramid. And our next speaker is Greg Drescher. I'm going to introduce you, Mr. Drescher. He's a senior advisor for strategic initiatives at the Culinary Institute of America, CIA. Previously and more recently as vice president of this Institute for Strategic Initiatives and Industry Leadership, he designed and oversaw the college's leadership initiatives, including academic partnerships, conferences, and other global initiatives. Over the course of nearly 30 years, with the CIA, he has led the creation of the Worlds of Flavor International Conference and Festival, as well as portfolio of health and sustainable leadership programs, including Menus of Change and Healthy Kitchens, Healthy Lives, both jointly presented by the Harvard School of Public Health, and the Menus of Change University Research Collaborative, co-led by the CIA and Stanford University as the CNA's Plan Forward Kitchen Digital Media Initiatives. In 2005, Greg was inducted into the James Beard Foundation's Who is Who of Food and Beverage in America, and subsequently shared 2 Beard Awards for the CIA's World Culinary Arts Digital Media Series. In the early 90s, before joining the CIA, he jointly spearheaded a multi-year collaboration of some of the world's leading food and health experts and organizations, including the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health and the World Health Organization, in researching and authoring the Mediterranean Diet Pyramid, a cultural model for healthy eating, released in its final form in 1994. Finally, the cumulative results of this initiative research were published in a special edition of the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, creating a strong platform for much of the academic, public policy, media, and consumer interest in the Mediterranean diet that has followed over the past 3 decades. Thank you very much, Mr. Drecher, for being with us. Please take the floor. And he's going to talk about the Mediterranean diet pyramid yesterday and today. Thank you. You have a few minutes if you can do it. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It's always a pleasure to be back here in Madrid, and I very much appreciate the organization of today's event, honoring, as we said 30 years ago, what led to the creation and release of the Mediterranean Pyramid in 1994. Special thanks to the International Olive Council, as well as the Spanish National Research Council, the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries, and Food, and the International Center for Advanced Mediterranean Agronomic Studies, other collaborators, and distinguished guests. Earlier this year, in the United States, a distinguished panel of nutrition scientists and public health experts, under the auspices of the U.S. News and World Report, once again proclaimed the Mediterranean diet as the #1 ranked dietary pattern they reviewed for the 7th year in a row. The accumulation of many years of scientific research confirming the health benefits of the traditional Mediterranean diet has led to widespread awareness of this culturally rooted plant-forward dietary pattern, with increasing adoption by so many around the world. This moderate to high-fat dietary pattern has been characteristic of the Mediterranean region since antiquity, with its heavy reliance on plant-sourced ingredients, including fruits and vegetables, whole grains, pulses, nuts and seeds, and an abundance of olive oil. However, the healthfulness of this dietary pattern only started to receive some early attention in the scientific and public health communities in Europe and the United States after World War II, with the publication of the 1948 Rockefeller Foundation study documenting the healthfulness of the dietary pattern of post-war Crete, and more significantly, the landmark 7-country study by Ancel Keys, which began in 1956 and was published in 1978. Unfortunately, the early awareness of the healthfulness of the Mediterranean diet was vastly overshadowed in the 1980s by a widespread belief and consensus in the scientific and public health communities that a reduction in total fat to 30% of calories, or as some researchers asserted, to 20% of calories, should be a key pillar of dietary guidance in order to achieve significant reduction in the prevalence of diet-related chronic diseases. Also, much more positively, in the 1980s, Dr. Antonia Trikopoulou, then a researcher at the Athens School of Public Health, started to rekindle interest in the healthy Greek Mediterranean diet with her published research, building on the earlier work of Ancel Keys. We are so fortunate to have Antonio with us today, someone who was and is a critical protagonist in the scientific discovery work around the Mediterranean diet. It wasn't until the early 1990s, however, that a unique collaboration of individuals and organizations emerged across academic disciplines and professional interests. Just as a note, I'm not a scientist. I bring the food and culture and culinary history piece to the puzzle here. This unique collaboration that thoroughly disrupted the entrenched public health consensus around the supremacy of low-fat diets in promoting health, and created the foundation for the dramatic rise in the academic, public policy, media, and consumer interest in the Mediterranean diet that ensued over the past 3 decades. This collaboration, as was alluded to, co-led by top scientists and experts from Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, both the departments of nutrition and epidemiology, WHO Regional Office for Europe, the Athens School of Public Health, the National Institute of Nutrition in Rome, and the Boston-based nonprofit Old Ways Preservation and Exchange Trust, of which I was a director at that time, resulted in the staging of 2 international academic conferences in 1993 and 1994 in the Boston area, the 1994 release of the Mediterranean Diet Pyramid, and a special edition of the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition in 1995, entirely devoted to the healthy Mediterranean Diet Pyramid. One of the key findings and insights from the review of the scientific evidence and analysis of the Mediterranean region leading up to the development of the Mediterranean diet was that patterns of chronic diseases, health, and adult life expectancy were less related to countries and were more of a function of the proximity to the olive-growing regions of the Mediterranean region. The initiative initially defined the Mediterranean diet as a model at the outset based on the strongest available evidence at the time as reflecting the food patterns of Crete, much of the rest of Greece, and southern Italy in the early 1960s. Now, these same food patterns existed and still exist in many cases throughout the Mediterranean region, from west to east and north to south. However, the examples of the differences in food, diet, and health patterns of, say, southern Italy in the early 1960s, where olive oil was the principal fat and meat consumption was low, versus northern Italy, where dairy fats predominate and meat was more abundant in the diet, underscored the importance of associating the reference model of the healthy Mediterranean diet with food and dietary patterns more than with the contours of political boundaries. A pattern similar to that of Italy can be observed, for instance, in Turkey, where you have coastal olive-growing regions versus the prevalence of animal fats in the interior north and east. In France, again, where you have coastal olive growing in Provence versus the prevalence of animal fats in the north of France, and you see this pattern in other parts of the Mediterranean as well. The diversity of healthy food and cooking across the Mediterranean, captured in the Mediterranean diet, is indeed stunning. Let's see. Okay. Here is a table of entirely plant-sourced ingredients we recently photographed in the region of Messina in the south of Greece. It's a plate of horta, or wild greens, with olive oil, also from Greece. Greens with olive oil also made an appearance in this pasta dish from Puglia in the south of Italy. In Istanbul, a plate of meze crafted entirely from pulses, vegetables, and olive oil delights customers. In Morocco, this is actually at a truck stop near Casablanca. Chicken tagines with olives and preserved lemons await diners. And in the south of Spain, what could be better on a hot day than a bowl of chilled salmorejo, the perfect marriage of tomatoes and olive oil? The release of the original Mediterranean Diet Pyramid in 1994, pictured on the right, stood in sharp contrast to the influential USDA Food Guide Pyramid, with its greater emphasis on the consumption of meat and dairy and its admonition to lower total fat. The Mediterranean diet also, on the right, again, prioritized nuts and legumes, or pulses, as plant proteins, took them out of the meat category, and it prioritized those in general over animal-based proteins in the USDA pyramid. Once launched, the Mediterranean diet became a communication symbol, an accelerator, if you will, that changed research agendas, dietary guidance, restaurant menus, and home cooking preferences in the United States, Europe, and well beyond. Now, importantly, the greater visibility and scientific endorsement of the Mediterranean diet also created a powerful statement about the possibility that had been doubted by many people, that optimal nutrition and deliciousness could be fully compatible. In fact, as we now know, they can be natural, even spectacular partners. Many, well beyond the Mediterranean region, have been inspired in recent years to adopt Mediterranean culinary approaches and techniques for transforming vegetables and sources of plant proteins from chickpeas, beans, lentils, nuts, and seeds, whole grains, into new family favorites. They have discovered the appeal of olive oil and the rich spectrum of extra virgin olive oils and their uses in everything from dressings and sauce making to sautéing, frying, and in healthier desserts. The Mediterranean diet collaboration in the 1990s demonstrated the value of scientists and public health leaders working in partnership with chefs and other culinary experts in order to grasp wider contexts of food cultures and drive change. This collaboration on the Mediterranean diet also spurred greater interest more broadly in the adaptation of the principles of the Mediterranean diet well beyond the Mediterranean basin, as well as in other cultural models for healthy eating from outside of the Mediterranean, principally from Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Further, the fact that olive cultivation and olive oil production now exists in the United States, Latin America, Asia, and Eastern Europe is a testament to the strength of the evidence supporting the healthfulness of the Mediterranean diet and the wide appeal of Mediterranean foods and flavors. Cultural models for healthy eating, including the Mediterranean diet, need to be understood in their historical context, but at the same time be open to enhancement in light of the findings of ongoing scientific research on diet and chronic disease links, and because of developments such as the emergence of sedentary lifestyles that has changed the calculus of what might be considered optimal in adapting and updating a given culturally rooted dietary pattern. The issue of carbohydrate quality, the need for populations everywhere to focus more on whole, intact grains and slow metabolizing, minimally processed carbohydrate-rich foods when consuming carbohydrates, is one such example of this. Fortunately, in the Mediterranean regions, at least I'm seeing that whole grains are starting to make at least an initial resurgence, bringing back old traditions and reminding us, for example, of the deliciousness of the dakos in Crete, that in fact never went away. Whole grain barley rusk rehydrated with a bit of water and piled high with chopped summer-ripe tomatoes, some feta cheese, and liberal amounts of extra virgin olive oil. Of late, we are also gratified to see that the Mediterranean diet is increasingly being heralded for its sustainability profile, from its lower carbon footprint to its inherent preservation of biodiversity, as earlier speakers referenced. At the center of the Mediterranean food systems are hundreds of millions of olive trees that serve as a carbon sink and barrier to desertification, and this is the other point that the olive oil sector needs to really emphasize. It's not just the trees, it's not just the olive groves, it's also that the oil makes low-carbon, plant-forward food choices competitive in taste with high-carbon animal-based foods and flavors in the minds of so many. So it's the job that the olive oil does, as well as the plants and the groves themselves. At the Culinary Institute of America, we have long been inspired by the Mediterranean diet as a prime iconic example of the nexus of food and culture, nutrition, environmental science, and culinary insight. Over many years, the CIA and the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, Department of Nutrition, have jointly presented program initiatives inspired by the Mediterranean diet and its broad principles, including Healthy Kitchens, Healthy Lives, our Menus of Change National Leadership Summit, for audiences ranging from chefs, food business leaders, K through 12 school food service directors to physicians and healthcare professionals. Next November, we're staging our 27th annual Worlds of Flavor International Conference and Festival, entirely devoted to the culinary traditions of the Mediterranean. Here in Spain, our Torre Barra Mediterranean Center, a joint project of the CIA and the University of Barcelona, includes our annual Tomorrow Tastes Mediterranean Conference series, now alternating between Spain and Greece, deepens our commitment to continue to elevate the UNESCO recognized World Heritage Mediterranean diet and also secure its place in global dialogues about healthy, sustainable food systems. In that program series, we peel back what we call peel back the layers of the onion, as it were, to make as to what makes the culinary techniques and flavor dynamics of this region really work from a culinary standpoint, from both a chef's and consumer standpoint. At the same time, we look to connect this heritage and global parallels with other culturally rooted models of healthy eating in both the global north and the global south. Twice per year, our Torre Barra Mediterranean Center welcomes CIA bachelor's degree students from our New York campus to come to Spain for a 15-week Mediterranean concentration based in Barcelona with cultural and culinary immersion experiences in Andalusia. In 2024, we faced the larger challenge of defining and popularizing planetary health diets that address the critical question of how to feed a projected population of nearly 10 billion people in 2050 a diet that is both healthy and sustainable. This is a challenge whose broad architecture of issues and solutions is being ably mapped out by the Eat Lancet Commission on Food, Planet, and Health in their upcoming 2.0 report to be published later next year. The traditional Mediterranean diet and food system, with its roots in olive cultivation stretching back many millennia, is, of course, a prime example of the planetary health diet that speaks to the sustainability challenges that we face today. And I believe that Professor Willett will be talking more about this a little bit later in the program. Now, more than ever, as we work to translate the framework of the planetary health diet, including the Mediterranean diet, into action, into greater action, we need to emphasize the value of cross-disciplinary and cross-cultural collaboration to elevate food choices, menus, dietary patterns, and food systems that are at once accessible and fully appealing to individuals and families everywhere, and that meet the imperatives of our time. The more that scientists, public health leaders, and medical experts can partner with chefs and other culinary experts and cultural leaders, the closer we will get to a delicious, healthy, and sustainable future. And just as we need to invite scientists, public health experts, and government leaders to work more closely with chefs and culinary professionals to make sure that we translate our best science and policy into appealing results at the dinner table, we also collectively need to elevate quality and excellence in agriculture and food production as a public health priority. For example, if and when we lose deliciousness in fruits and vegetables, or other foods and ingredients that are the very foundation of the Mediterranean diet, because of production and distribution demands and of increasingly complex supply chains, our mission will fail. As I've often said, the unapologetic elevation of deliciousness from farm to table needs to be a broad public health imperative. Finally, in closing, a word about the International Olive Council. Throughout especially the 1990s and continuing until this day, the IOC has played a pivotal role in not only helping to raise the visibility about the healthfulness of olive oil, but also the entirety of the healthy Mediterranean dietary pattern and Mediterranean food culture and lifestyle. They have been a great connector of people and organizations who care about this World Heritage and want to see it continue. Not as summarized in a report on a dusty library shelf or as a museum piece, but as a thriving contemporary entity that supports rural communities throughout the Mediterranean and now around the world, that provides a model of healthy diet and lifestyle with wide appeal, and that stands as a critical, inspiring reference as we work to transform our food systems for planetary health. To the leadership and membership of the IOC, I say thank you, and I wish you all success for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Drexler. Let's continue our session with the next speaker. The next speaker is Antonia Trichopoulou. I am going to introduce a brief summary of her CV. Antonia Trichopoulou is a medicine doctor, a member of the Academic of Athens, professor adjunct at Yale University. Her scientific work focuses on public health and nutritional epidemiology, emphasizing the health effects of the Mediterranean diet and traditional foods. In 2011, she received the Federation of European Nutrition Societies Award for her outstanding nutritionist career. Named in Thomson Reuters 2014 World's Most Influential Scientific Minds list and awarded as a highly cited researcher by Clarivate Analytics in 2018 and 2021, culminating in being decorated with the Golden Cross of Honor for work in preventive medicine and nutrition by the President of the Greek Republic. It's a great honor for us. Welcome to Antonia Trichopoulou. You can say.
Good morning to everybody, distinguished audience, dear colleagues and friends. It's really a privilege and a great pleasure to participate in this conference, and really I thank with all my heart the organizer for giving me the opportunity to be here and to talk about Mediterranean diet, a topic which expresses both my scientific beliefs as well as my love for the Mediterranean way of living. Having said that, I wish to remember you that Mediterranean diet is deeply rooted in history. It has been evolved by optimizing the use of land, the use of local available products. Also, it was influenced by cultural and religious habits, and was given to us after many centuries, if not millennia, of elaborating it by thousands of people in the Mediterranean region. And in addition to that, sorry, I'm going something wrong. Can you help me how to proceed? Oh, what to press? This one, I don't have enough power. So, I wish to remind you also that the Mediterranean diet of today is an integral part of the ancient times, and in many aspects we can trace the roots of our foods. Here in this slide you can see a cup of olives, which they were found in excavation in Crete, and then they dated more than 5 years ago. They were used the same way we are using today, in a bowl, black olives. And in addition to that, so no, I don't have power. There. So in addition to that, you can see the way the olive trees, they are collected today in many parts of the Mediterranean area, yet, and the way they were used 5,000 years ago somewhere in the Mediterranean region. So, no. Next, please. Okay. So I am coming to a fragment of a saying of a philosopher who lived 500 years before Christ, Aristhenes. And he said that archipedepsios in ton onomaton episkepsis in Greek. This is Greek for you. Even for me, it's difficult. The beginning, which in English is the beginning of a right education, is the examination of words. Why I presented this fragment today? Because the term of Mediterranean diet has been more than often misused, either intentionally or unintentionally. So at least in the today presentation, when I'm talking about Mediterranean diet, I'm talking about traditional Mediterranean diet, not Mediterranean type diet, not Mediterranean diet of today, because things after the 60s, they change a lot. Many socioeconomic changes, they happen all around in the world, including in the Mediterranean area, and our dietary habits dramatically changed. Thus, what we could define as Mediterranean diet, the dietary pattern found in the olive-grown areas of the Mediterranean regions of the late 50s and early 60s. But why I'm saying in the olive-grown areas? Because, my dear colleagues, you know that Mediterranean diet cannot exist without olive oil. It's the center of the Mediterranean diet. Next, please. So I am coming back, according to the title of my presentation, to Crete. Crete is considered the cradle of the Mediterranean diet. And let's see what was said by a scholar, a British scholar who visited Greece in the 18th century. He left a very big book, and in which is written that in Crete, the evening meal was a dish of wild greens. It was very well presented by my colleague and friend, Dr. Greg Drescher, before, the value of the wild greens and how we use the wild greens. Well, which seems to be their main diet. They boil them and add olive oil, bread, olives, and sometimes cheese. Remember the pyramid. Milk products in moderation. Complement their meals. A mother will rarely give bread to her child without putting olive on a plate to soak. I did that the same in my hotel. I put olive oil on bread and then on the top of tomato sauce to soak in this liquid of life. I have never seen a better description of olive oil than this one, which was done by a British. So, it makes it more delicious. I mean, taste is not ignored. And before, Greg mentioned that for the 7th consecutive years, the Mediterranean diet was elected as the best diet in the world. Not only because it is safe, not only because it's healthy, but also because it's tasty. And we should not ignore that. Then this British author continued by saying that oil is used with all kinds of vegetables, as well as in the preparation of all kinds of meat and fish. In short, it's go into all dishes. I have to tell you, my colleagues, that in my kitchen there is nothing other fat except olive oil. And I'm saying fat because it does not reflect what is olive oil. We should speak about fat and oils. But by using the word fat happened what Greg said before. In the Northern European countries, the Central Europe in the 80s, they said reduce fat without taking under consideration that we in the South were eating olive oil, which was not fat. But olive oil was considered as fat. Next, please. Then, 1 century later, the Rockefeller Foundation visited Greece in order to help Crete, more specifically Crete, but the whole Greece at that time was in ruins in 1847, because the Second World War was followed in Greece by a detrimental civil war. So the people Greece was really in ruin. And this group came there to study and to see how they could help. And then, of course, the very first thing which they did was to register what this population underdeveloped. I didn't like this term. They should add maybe economically underdeveloped. And whenever we use the term underdeveloped, we have to clarify if we mean economically or in other terms. Nevertheless, they came to help this, and they did an excellent job. And it's very good. I hope soon to publish their data, because I have the original questionnaire and the original approach for this study. But then, after the study, they said, please, next to this, the food consumption levels were surprisingly good. On the whole, their food pattern and food habits were extremely well adapted to their natural and economic resources, as well as to their needs. Also, in this sentence, you can recognize also the sustainability and the sustainability aspects of the Mediterranean diet. They are included. They say, well adapted to their national and economic resources, as well as their needs. Next, please. Then, the very same time, a talented medical doctor from Minnesota University, from the United States, was passed because in the United States, the incidence of coronary heart disease were very high, but not in the Mediterranean region. Then he set a study because he considered diet as one of the main risk factors for this observed difference in the incidence of coronary heart disease. Next, please. And then I will be a little more analytical in this paper because you can see here that Finland is the E on the right top, I think, yes. And Crete is decay in down, down, down. They have very low incidence of coronary heart disease. Crete in this time has the lowest mortality from all the cohorts participated in the study, and Finland has the highest. And Greece, it was very high in fat intake, and Finland was relatively low. But, next please. What was the results of the key study was that it was actually the first considered by Ansel Keys, and it was Ansel Keys developed the term Mediterranean diet. But he said that for this difference in mortality, the main reason was that the low saturated content of the Cretan population provided protection against coronary heart disease by lowering plasma cholesterol levels. Ansel Keys never mentioned olive oil. Olive oil in Ansel Keys' equation is neutral, was never taken under account. As a result of that, and I think it was great, the Finnish, they said, come on, we have to reduce our saturated fat. What to do? To reduce meat, to reduce lard, to reduce butter. And how to replace that? What else? With seed oils. Excellent, fantastic. And really, they have fantastic results. They reduce their mortality rate from cardiovascular disease. But what happened in the South? In the South, then they start promoting seed oils. And then in Greece, they start advocating, get rid of olive oil and cook these seed oils. And then we start cutting the trees. It was at this time, I was very young. We were desperate, and we didn't have data, but we were seeing that our traditional diet, next please, our traditional diet and the use of olive tree, the olive oil, we were cutting the tree. Even the same happened to a certain extent I don't think that it was Israel. In Israel, Palestine, it was, and then in Cyprus, because in Cyprus I went preaching for olive oil at this time. And then we invited, that's why we did the first meeting. It was very successful in order to inform the scientific community of Greece about the value of olive oil. It's eleolado and Tigia, it's olive oil and health. And then on the very left, you can see Grante Covian. I'm sure it's the only picture I have from this event. Grante Covian was a big personality in Spain. He was a collaborator of Ansel Keys, and he was really a believer in olive oil. I hope that many of you have met him. I think that now he's dead. So when I sent him a letter, gladly he came. As well he came. And then it's the involvement of Harvard. Professor McMahon, it is 1, 2, 3, the third on my left, and then it's my late husband, Dimitrios Trichopoulos. Then, well, the desperation continued, and we were trying to push for the Mediterranean diet, and then we developed a conference in Delphi. Delphi is the center of the world, or in a way, we say that. And then we develop, and then it's indicative, the title of this work, in '86, the Mediterranean diet and food cultures. From that time, we were discussing about the link between Mediterranean diet and food culture, because this is what we were perceiving in Greece. It was not much the healthy purposes, but it was the culture. And then the subtitle was what, why, and how. And we were talking in 86 for Mediterranean diet. And then it was in the picture, you see on the left, the late Elizabeth Held, which was Greg Drescher. They were main developers of the Mediterranean diet pyramid. She was at that time officer in WHO. She was really a believer, although she was Norwegian. And from the first time, she was really a great help, and she opened doors, being the World Health Organization. And then in the middle is Professor John Waterlow. At that time, we were in desperation. We were trying to find support. We were trying to find believers in the Mediterranean diet. And then, but John Waterlow, his father was ambassador in Greece, and he was brought up in Greece, and he knew Greece very well. So I knew him, and I said, this is the situation. And he said, Antonia will find, we need data. They were asking by everybody. Bring Antonia data. What are you saying? It's fattening the Mediterranean diet. It's good, the seed oils, and so on. And then John, when I don't know how many months he spent in the British libraries in order to find out what the Roman and the Greek soldiers they were eating, because he wanted. He said that finally in this report is published his work, because they could, if a soldier was not healthy, he could not gain the war. So he provided data about the Mediterranean way of feeding the soldiers, the Romans and the Greeks. Next, please. But then it happened, and this is the turning point. In 1991, unfortunately, I have no picture of this event. In Porto Carras, an international symposium on the foods and wines of Greece. And then I met for the first time in my life Greg Drescher. And then Greg Drescher, from the beginning, I don't know, he has to explain it to us why he was so much impressed from the Mediterranean diet, and he was asking more information. So after that, my husband at that time was director of the Department of Epidemiology at Harvard. He was very friend of Dr. Willett, and he was friend also with the Dean Feinberg. And then the miracle happened. Next, please. It was organized at Harvard in presence of Ansel Keys, the meeting which we celebrate today. After that, things were not so easy, but the Mediterranean diet was there. And as Greg mentioned before, then we have to fight. Everybody was saying, yes, it's good, it's tasty, it's healthy, but it's fattening. It's very high in fat. We were telling them that, you know, this is 40 or 35% of calories on a daily menu. Assure that you take a lot of vegetables. You cannot eat as you try in the United States to eat a raw zucchini, a raw eggplant. But if you cook eggplant with olive oil and with all the other herbs, aromatic herbs, it's tasty, and you can consume 200 eggplants or okra easily. So, but next, please. So this is the original pyramid, which the very, very first version, and I remember Greg going from to Elizabeth to me to Willett and saying, well, I mean, this way or the other way till the final form of the pyramid was developed. And then it was an exponential increase in paper related to Mediterranean diet. And then, next, please. Next. And then we published a paper based on a small elderly cohort of Greeks. small prospective studies. And it was the very first time we applied the Mediterranean diet score. Why I'm saying that? Because till then, we didn't have a way to measure the adherence to Mediterranean diet as well as to define the Mediterranean diet. Next, please. And then all around Europe, and at this point I have really, again, for many reasons, I have to thank the Olive Oil Council, but at this period was very, very, very supportive. They were supportive several meetings all around the world, as it was also the Mediterranean Agricultural Institute later in time. But I am mentioning specifically this second forum, which took place in 2002, because it was the first time, it was a common meeting between the people, the health people, and the people from literature, from the classics. And we could not find a way to collaborate, because they were saying, why? Mediterranean diet has to do nothing with health. And we were saying, well, okay, but it has to do with tradition, but of course it's not only tradition. And this was a very constructive, although I remember we were saying the meeting took place in Reggio di Calabria till 2 o'clock in the morning in order to write a consensus report. Next, please. But of course, it will be an omission if I will not mention the always president at that time, Dan Guilford. You see him and also the former Olive Oil Council President Director, Dr. Lucchetti, who was very, very supportive in all the activities referring to olive oil. Next, please. Here is on the left is the always president. Now he's late, and then Dr. Lucchetti on the left. Next, please. What is that? Well, I was mentioning that with the help of Olive Oil Council, many meetings they were organized all around the world. In China, you see here, we have been in China in 2001. Unbelievable. And we were exposed and we were trying to find out ways in order to use olive oil in the walks. And then we collaborated also with some persons, cooks in China. Also, they were organizing meetings in Thailand, in Japan, all over Europe, in the United States. Well, this decade was very, very, very active in publicizing the results of the Mediterranean diet. Next, please. So it will be an omission if we do not mention the meetings which are organized also here in Spain, in Cordoba. And I wish to mention also this report, was a consensus report after a meeting or 2 meetings, I don't know, we work a lot on that, which I have the impression that this report was instrumental for approving the health claim for olive oil by the European Commission. Next, please. So, we talk about, and also Greg mentioned that for the decade of the 90s, we have the problem that yes, the Mediterranean diet is good after the 93 meeting in Boston, but it's fattening. It's fattening. Thanks God. It was published a paper in the New England Journal of Medicine by Frank Sachs and many other colleagues from Harvard, which say that, okay, look, it's the calorie which count for obesity, not the macronutrients. And later on, we were saying it's the type of fat which is important for your health. But this was, I choose some papers which really they were instrumental in continuing, the international acceptance of Mediterranean diet. Next, please. Well, another turning point was the acceptance, the inclusion of the Mediterranean diet to intangible cultural heritage for humanity, and which they say that Mediterranean diet is a social practice based on the set of skill, knowledge, practices, and tradition. Quite often in the medical science, we forget that how important is the way food is produced, the way food is consumed. It's a social science. This was the big opening, next, for the Mediterranean now not to be only a healthy diet, but to be a sustainable diet. This is the big turn of our decade. And keep in mind that I want to tell you that this is very important, and we didn't speak about climatic change, that here in southern Crete, the olive tree, they produce flour, but not olives. Because as the experts, they say they're not exposed, I don't know, so many hours in a temperature under 10 degrees Celsius. So this is an issue which clearly has to be dealt in the future by all of us. In Crete, they say the experts, the South Crete, at least in 10 years, it's going to become desert. So I don't know if it's true or not, but I'm repeating because we have to be aware of that, since you say from the cradle to Mediterranean diet to today. So next, please. So it was mentioned that Mediterranean diet it's very accepted all over the world. Next, please. So based on that, we thought that it's good some lessons of the Mediterranean diet, to be shared, to be shared with other parts of the world. We don't mean that we have to ask the people in Africa to eat the Mediterranean way, or the people in Scandinavia to eat watermelons in the summer. But some lessons of the Mediterranean diet can be learned, like increase fruit, increase vegetables, and know how to cook in order to increase the consumption. And Mediterranean diet is locally consumed, locally produced, locally consumed. This is the essence. We said that Mediterranean diet was evolved by optimizing the land, by using the available products. So there are two papers, very briefly. I know that I have only 2 minutes left, which I want to bring to your attention. The next, please. The one talk about the planetary diet, the Planetarian diet, in relation to Mediterranean diet, and they developed the pyramids based on local products. For example, in Africa, they recommend the use of moringa, which is an olive oil produced by the fruits of a plant which is very high in olive oil, or teff, a grain which has more concentrated protein than our cereals. And the other paper is that the planetary diet, which produced again by our Harvard group, and then they organized what was proposed by the old ways in the decade of the 90s, very early 20s, in order to develop pyramids for various parts of the world, but based on the Mediterranean diet concept. Next, please. What I want to stress before closing my presentation is that, okay, the epidemiological data are concordant and suggest that Mediterranean diet degrees is good for our health. But we as scientists, we do not know the underpinning mechanism or mechanisms which are responsible for these beneficial effects. And I think that you have to look much more to the traditional foods, because to the traditional foods we are exposed every day, to the local products and to the way they are prepared. Next, please. It would be a great omission if I am not going also for the future and for some similar works which they are underway and they open new paths. The one is the Predimed, the results of Predimed, which one or another way continue. And the Lancet Eat report, which deals with sustainable diet, and ask for us to act in order to save not only our health, but our planet. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Trishopoulou. And now let's continue with our scientist session. And the next speaker is Miguel Ángel Martínez González, medicine doctor and PhD, is professor of public health, Universidad de Navarra, España, and adjunct professor at Harvard School of Public Health and Nutrition area. Founder of the Department of Public Health at the Universidad de Navarra, and principal investigator of large cohorts and randomized trials, SOUND, Predimed, Predimed Plus, and Unity projects. He was co-PI with Frank Hu, our next speaker too, in several NIH-funded grants on cardiometabolic disease and metabolomics. He has published more than 1,400 articles and abstracts indexed in the Web of Science, and has been mentor of a large group of full professors and associate professors of epidemiology and public health. Thank you very much for being here. We are going to welcome, come to the stage, to Professor Martínez González. Have the floor. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation, your introduction, and your nice invitation, especially to the Olive Oil Council, and also to the CIHM, and also to the National Research Council, that's the SIC, for their kind invitation to give this talk that is so impressive for me, because we are 30 years after the Mediterranean Diet Pyramid. But first of all, I want to acknowledge my collaborators in the Predimed study and further studies continuing the Predimed with metabolomics. So usually I tended to put this slide, these photographs and these names at the end of my presentation, but as time goes by, I think that what they have done is considerably more important to what I have done, and it is worthwhile to say first thank you to all of them at the beginning of my presentation, because the merit is deserved by them. So I have no conflicts of interest, and this is the outline that I'm going to follow. The aim of this presentation is to show some results of the main landmark trials developed in 30 years after the Mediterranean Diet Pyramid. So I will speak only about 4 of them: Predimed, CardioPrep, Predimed Plus, and Unity. They are landmark trials, and it is really impressive how much science has been produced about the Mediterranean diet during these 30 years. And we are not speaking of preliminary science or something that is just a correlation. We are speaking of the best evidence that we may have in science, that is the randomized controlled trials. So what I would say here, what I will say here, is about large randomized trials. So first of all, PREDIMED. I think that many of you are familiar with PREDIMED. So we are here, we are in the upper part of the flow chart of the science, the classification of the science in epidemiology. So we are in the experimental field. So then the upper we go, the better the evidence. So we were conducting a field trial. It is not a clinical trial. It is with healthy people at risk, at high risk. So what we did in PREDIMED was for the first time to conduct a large randomized trial with an overall dietary pattern. So we included men and women from 55 to 80 without previous cardiovascular disease, but with type 2 diabetes or at least 3 major cardiovascular risk factors. And we randomly assigned them to the control diet that was the paradigm at that time, that was the state of the art at that time. We started the PREDIMED in 2003, so 21 years ago. At that time, the paradigm for a healthy diet was a low-fat diet recommended by the American Heart Association. That was the control diet, and we allocated the rest of the sample to Mediterranean diet. In one of them, we provided for free 15 liters of extra virgin olive oil every 3 months, and in the other group, a provision of nuts for consuming 30 grams of tree nuts every day. So after 5 years, we tested what was the effect, the comparative effect of the 3 diets on myocardial infarction, cerebrovascular disease, and cardiovascular death. This is the best scientific evidence on the Mediterranean, on the benefits of the Mediterranean diet so far. So you see that we did the intervention. We repeated contacts every 3 months with dietitians, with trained dietitians. So we recommended first exclusively in the Mediterranean diet plus extra virgin olive oil, and in the Mediterranean diet plus nuts, we recommended to use exclusively olive oil for all culinary purposes, to consume at least 4 tablespoons of olive oil, to consume every day 3 pieces of fruit, 2 servings of vegetables, 1 of them as a salad, 1 glass of wine if they were drinkers, and 3 servings per week of tree nuts, fish or seafood, legumes, and to consume sofrito, a special Mediterranean sauce, at least twice per week, and to prefer poultry instead of red or processed meats. And we discourage the consumption of sodas, cookies, commercial bakery, red and processed meats, and cream, margarine, or butter. So I highlight here the consumption of 1 glass of wine with meals, 1 glass of wine with meals, at least 1 or 2 glasses of wine with meals. And that this is highly controversial nowadays. So I will address this issue later. So this 14-item score called MIDAS, Mediterranean Diet Adherence Screener, has been replicated and validated in many countries, particularly in the US, with metabolomics studies. So what we found after repeating the advices, after 5 years, every 3 months, contacts with the participants, we found a 28% reduction in the risk of the primary endpoint with Mediterranean diet plus nuts, and 31% reduction, relative reduction, with Mediterranean diet plus extra virgin olive oil. So we stopped prematurely the trial because of this successful result. But we also found a reduction in peripheral artery disease, very, very strong reduction with extra virgin olive oil, and also a significant reduction with tree nuts. We found a reduction in the main arrhythmia, in atrial fibrillation, only with extra virgin olive oil. We found a reduction in diabetes of 40% with Mediterranean diet, 40% relatively less new cases of diabetes among those, about 50% of them, among those who were not diabetics at baseline, and 18% reduction with the Mediterranean diet plus nuts. We have recently go farther. We have been going farther in the adherence to the Mediterranean diet with repeated measurements every year. This is unique to have a full-length FFQ every year and to know whether or not they were following correctly the Mediterranean diet. So even people in the control group who were following this MIDAS closely, they have a considerably lower risk of diabetes during the follow-up. So for breast cancer, we need to acknowledge that the number of cases, fortunately for our patients, for our female patients, the number of cases was very low, but we observe a significant reduction with Mediterranean diet and extra virgin olive oil. In both atrial fibrillation and breast cancer, that we observed the effect only with the Mediterranean diet plus extra virgin olive oil, we did a detailed dose response analysis and we saw that the higher the intake of extra virgin olive oil, the lower the risk during the follow-up time. And also we observe benefits for cognitive function in this paper. And another paper conducted in these assessments were only conducted in Barcelona and Pamplona. We have 11 centers. And in these centers, we did a thorough evaluation of the cognitive function. And we found, especially for extra virgin olive oil, improvements in global and frontal function. So these results were subsequently replicated. In Predimed, everybody was free of previous cardiovascular disease, but we were advisors of another large trial. You see, 7 years follow-up, more than 1 decade working with these patients. This is the CardioPEP trial conducted in southern Spain by a single center, Córdoba University. The participants were from 20 to 75 years old, and all of them were survivors of a previous myocardial infarction. They have only 2 arms in the trial, low-fat diet or Mediterranean diet plus extra virgin olive oil, and they followed very closely the protocol of intervention and everything as in Predimed, and they found a 27% relative reduction in the risk of a composite primary endpoints of several major cardiovascular outcomes. So this is an independent replication using basically the same methods for the intervention that we use in Predimed, but in secondary prevention. So Predimed Plus, what is the rationale for Predimed Plus? So if you look at this map, this was the prevalence of obesity in girls from 5 to 19 years old. You see in green is like 5%, in blue is less than 5%, 1 or 2% of obesity in girls in 1975. But if we look several years later to the map, you see how things have changed in the world. So we are in a pandemic of obesity. The COVID-19 pandemic is out, so it went by, but now we have the 21st century pandemic is obesity, and it is here to stay. So we have a severe problem. So Predimed Plus thinks in this. You see in the United States the prevalence of self-reported obesity in 2016, and things are getting worse and worse in the United States 6 years later. And these are the projections for 2030. Also with a growing prevalence of morbid obesity. So what is the reason why this is happening? What is the reason? We cannot blame the clinical doctors. We need to blame all the people as me working in public health. We need to acknowledge that we did badly our job. We have been always arriving late. So this is the problem. In public health, in epidemiology, we are arriving late. So we design In 2012, first, Estefania Toledo went for 6 months. Estefania Toledo is a professor, a young professor working at our university in Navarra. She went to Harvard for 6 months in 2012. Then I also went there. We received a lot of inputs from the professors of the Harvard School of Public Health, including Frank Hu, Walter Willett, Franz Sachs, Alberto Askerio, Eric Green, Darius Mozaffarian, Mayor Stanford, of course. He has been deeply involved in this trial. And we designed a trial going beyond the Mediterranean diet. So this is the meaning of PREDIMED Plus. So we designed this trial in 2012, comparing the traditional Mediterranean diet as the control group, and now we were adding to the Mediterranean diet several new things. The frugality of the Mediterranean diet, you see, how few things in the plate, so reducing the size of the servings, reducing the energy intake, promoting physical activity, and providing also behavioral and motivational support for weight loss in people who were overweight and had metabolic syndrome. So this is PREDIMED Plus. We started in 2013. This is the cohort profile that you can find all the design and methods here. And we incorporated 23 centers, not 11 as we did in PREDIMED. In PREDIMED Plus, we have 23 centers. You have the number of recruited participants, almost 7,000. So we started in our center as the Bangor Center in 2013, and other centers were incorporated 2014, 2015, 2016. And this is participants were randomly allocated to either just the Mediterranean diet without any energy restriction, any goal for weight loss, any physical activity, just Mediterranean diet, or adding the plus. So the intervention has been maintained already for 6 years, but we decided to add 2 further years for observation without intervention. So we started in 2013, and after 11 years, this December, in 1 month's time, we will finish the follow-up of all our participants, and we will obtain the definitive results. So you can await some nice papers in 2025 with the results of PREDIMED Plus. So far, this is the most important paper that we published. This was just after 1 year follow-up. This was published in JAMA. This is extraordinary to publish a paper with interim results in such a journal as JAMA with the results. So we observed first that we were able to modify the overall dietary pattern. So here is very similar to the 14 points, but the points that are in white font are the points where we added the avoidance of foods that may increase your weight, and also to reduce the calorie intake. So we were reducing sugary beverages a lot more than in PREDIMED 1. We were reducing white bread. This was new, increasing whole grains, reducing refined grains, rice and pasta. And we were also adding wine here, only for those who were drinkers at baseline. That was the design. And what we observed, we have here in the upper part, you have the intervention, and I am blinding the result that was at baseline, and in the control group in the lower part of the slide. And after 1 year, you see, this is the distribution of the 17 points of adherence to the intended diet. So we saw a strong change, a very strong change, very dramatic change with the intervention in the intervention group, but not so much in the control group. So we were able to modify with the intervention by the dietitians. Here it was more intense. We were able to modify the overall dietary pattern. So you can see here, So that was at baseline, that was after 1 year. So it was a lot of change. And this change was parallel with changes in risk factors. So changes in risk factors, all of them were, this is not a confidence interval, this is the full distribution of the risk factor. So you see here the main risk factors, also the indexes of adiposity, and with the exception of LDL, everything was in the expected direction. And this is very important. This is really very important. In almost every trial for weight loss is got after 6 months or 1 year, and then there is a regain. Here, with the Mediterranean diet, because it has been said, it is tasty, it is palatable, you can enjoy it, so we didn't observe any regain. The weight loss was maintained after so many years. So this is a very important finding with the Mediterranean diet, reducing calories, so for weight loss. And then in this paper, we observed that also the body fat distribution was in the expected direction with a reduction in visceral fat with the intervention as compared to the control, and also with the total lean mass increased with the physical activity program and the reduction in calories in the intervention group. So now I am going to speak of the fourth point very briefly because Raúl is telling me to end soon. So the UNATI, I need to skip the slides. So UNATI is, you know that there is a J-shaped association between alcohol and total mortality or cardiovascular disease, but now there is a controversy. I will skip this. So, for example, for breast cancer, there is no level of alcohol intake that is healthy. So previously I said 1 glass of wine per day. So are we doing harm? Should we remove wine from the Mediterranean diet? So in this paper published in Lancet in 2018, that was a comment of only 1.5 pages saying no level of alcohol consumption improves health. So the message here in 1.5 page of Lancet in 2018 was forbid alcohol in any form, in any pattern for everybody. And this paper was just a comment of the original study of the global burden of disease. But the original study in the global burden of disease have like 25 pages. Most people read only the 1.5 page, but not the full report. So, and this message has been highly influential. So starting in 2018, many people working in public health started to repeat this mantra. You know what a mantra is? No level of alcohol consumption improves health. Repeat with me, no level of... this was what the papers and the media say. But the same group of the global burden of disease, 4 years later, with new data, they said small amounts of alcohol consumption are associated with improved health outcomes in population that predominantly face a high burden of cardiovascular diseases. So there is a need for precision medicine to stratify the message, because even in the same group, there is a controversy. They say different things just 4 years apart. So they define like 2 points, the theoretical minimum risk exposure level and the equivalence with non-drinkers. So here you have the standard drinks, they define this, and they propose like limits for both points in several regions of the world and according to age and sex. For example, here, in Western Europe, where we are now, for women of 60 to 64 years old, the healthiest level is not 0, it's half a drink a day, so 3.5 drinks on average per week, and the equivalent with non-drinkers is 1.2 drinks per day. and it is even higher for a man of the same age. So it depends on age, because as you get older, you have a higher risk of ischemic heart disease and ischemic stroke. So it depends. But here, they said nothing about the drinking pattern. And we have several studies showing that red wine, for example, regarding inflammatory markers, red wine reduces them more than total wine or white wine or beer or liquors. Liquors even can increase some of the inflammatory biomarkers. And this is a very large study, mainly conducted in women, in the Nurses' Health Study and Health Professional Follow-up. And there are a lot of studies showing benefits for wine, for red wine. For example, in this narrative review, they are reviewing a lot of epidemiologic studies showing benefits, particularly for red wine. And there are also systematic reviews conducted in Spain where they conclude that that there is an inverse relationship to cardiovascular mortality with wine, protective effect against cognitive decline, and no association with the occurrence of cancer, according to these systematic reviews of published epidemiologic studies. We defined 10 years ago the Mediterranean alcohol drinking pattern. So it consists in moderation, spreading the consumption over the week, consuming always alcohol with meals, not without meals, no binge drinking, and preference for wine. So, and we found that within constant levels of total alcohol consumption, there was a reduction in the risk of total mortality if you closely follow the Mediterranean alcohol drinking pattern. This was subsequently replicated in several studies. I'm going to... And Antonia Tricopoulou, this study of the anatomy of the health effects of the Mediterranean diet. So if you remove from the Mediterranean diet moderate ethanol consumption, you are going to lose 23.5% of the protective effect against total mortality. So this is something that we may not lose. So, well, I'm going to... You know, the largest trials, randomized trials ever conducted on the effects of alcohol on health are these 3 trials. The largest one with 224 participants. So we are conducting, I will finish here. We are conducting a new trial called UNATI, University of Navarra Alumni Trialist Initiative. This was funded by the European Research Council with an advanced research grant, where we compare under a non-inferiority paradigm, moderate drinking pattern according to the Mediterranean alcohol drinking pattern versus abstention in drinkers from 50 to 75 years old. And our aim is to recruit 10,000 drinkers. We started the recruitment before the summer, and we have recruited so far 2,000 volunteers. And we have randomized them, and we are doing the intervention. We expect to complete the recruitment at the end of June 25, and we will follow up then until the end of 2028. So in 2029, I promise that I may come here again to tell you the results. Thank you very much for your attention. Perdón, que me he pasado.
Thank you very much, Professor Martínez González, for your comments. The last project, because we are olive oil lovers, but we are wine lovers too. So I hope the results will confirm our expectations. Anyway, let's follow with the next speaker. Our next speaker is Frank Wu. He's a medicine doctor, master in public health, and PhD is the Frederick J. Ster Professor of Nutrition and Epidemiology and Chair of the Department of Nutrition at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. He's also Professor of Medicine at Harvard Medical School and Brigham and Women's Hospital. His major research interests include epidemiology and prevention of cardiometabolic diseases through diet and lifestyle, gene-environment interaction, and risk of obesity and type 2 diabetes. Nutritional metabolomics in type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease, and nutrition transition, metabolic phenotypes, and cardiovascular disease in low and middle income countries. Dr. Hu serves as director of Dietary Biomarker Development Center and co-director of Obesity Epidemiology and Prevention Program at Harvard. Dr. Hu is the recipient of the Kelly West Award for Outstanding Achievement in Epidemiology by the American Diabetes Association in 2010. He was named the American Heart Association Ansel Keys Memorial Lecturer in 2018. He has published a textbook on obesity epidemiology and more than 1,500 peer-reviewed papers with an H index of 318. Dr. Hu served on the 2015 Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee of the USDA Health and Human Services. He has served on the editorial advisory board of the Lancet Diabetes and Endocrinology, Diabetes Care and Clinical Chemistry. Dr. Hu is a member of National Academy of Medicine. Thank you very much for being here. Welcome to you. You can add on the stage. It's a pleasure.
Hey, good morning. It's really an honor for me to speak at this really important conference. First of all, I want to pay tribute to our colleagues, Greg, Antonia, and also Walter Willett for their vision and the leadership in developing the Mediterranean diet pyramid more than 30 years ago. So this is truly a milestone in nutrition and also in public health. So today I'm going to discuss what kind of scientific evidence that we have developed to unravel the secrets of the Mediterranean diet. As Antonia said earlier, we all know Mediterranean diet is good for you, but why? So the modern science can help us to better understand the biological mechanisms behind the Mediterranean diet. So as Greg and also Antonia mentioned earlier, for 7 years in a row, the Mediterranean diet has been ranked #1 best diet by the US Nielsen report. This is truly remarkable because 30 years ago, very few people in the US have heard the Mediterranean diet or followed the Mediterranean diet. Very few people actually consumed olive oil at that time. But now, 30 years later, Mediterranean diet has become one of the most popular diets in the US. So the second place is the DASH diet, and then the third place is MIND diet. MIND diet is basically the combination of the Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet. Most of the data I'm going to present come from our large cohort studies, the Nurses Health studies. So far, we have collected detailed data on diet and lifestyle factors, health conditions among more than 300,000 women in 3 generations of nurses over 4 decades. So this study has become one of the largest, longest running studies on diet and health in the world. Besides detailed data on diet and lifestyle, we have also collected millions of biospecimen samples, including blood samples, urine samples, stool samples, and even toenails. one of the most important findings from our cohort studies is that the type of fat or the quantity of fat is more important than total amount of fat in our diet. As you can see here, trans fat is the worst type of diet fat. Saturated fat is also associated with increased risk of cardiovascular disease and mortality. On the other hand, monounsaturated fat and polyunsaturated fat from plant sources and also from fish associated with lower risk of cardiovascular disease and mortality. So this is, I think, one of the most important data to support the beneficial effects of the Mediterranean diet, because again, what we have found here is that the quality of fat or the type of fat is much more important than the total amount of fat in our diet. Consistent with those findings, we observed that some of the high-fat foods in our diet, like nuts, olive oil, and avocados, they're all very high-fat foods. They're actually associated with lower risk of cardiovascular disease and mortality. Other plant-based foods, such as fruits and vegetables, whole grains, are also associated with lower risk of chronic disease and mortality. Numerous epidemiological studies, including our cohorts, have observed that regular consumption of coffee is actually associated with a wide range of health benefits, including lower risk of diabetes, cardiovascular disease, gout, neurodegenerative disease such as Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's disease. And regular consumption of coffee is also associated with lower risk of some cancers, especially liver cancer and endometrial cancer. So those data have been remarkably consistent across different populations and also across different types of coffees, including American coffee and also espresso. So I think this is really good news for a lot of people who drink coffee habitually. And it's also very important to understand why regular consumption of coffee is beneficial for various health outcomes. Of course, coffee contains not just caffeine, but also numerous bioactive compounds, such as polyphenols. Using longitudinal data, we examined both shorter-term and longer-term changes in diet quality and the subsequent mortality risk. This paper was actually led by Dr. Mercedes Sotos, who was a postdoc several years ago in my group, and now a professor at Autonomous University Madrid. Mercedes is actually in the audience. And there are several take-home messages from this important study. The first one is that the longer-term improvement in diet quality has much greater benefit than short-term improvement in diet quality. This makes a lot of sense because longer-term adherence to Mediterranean diet or other healthy dietary patterns confer reduced risk of chronic disease and mortality. And also, there is more than one way to eat a healthy diet. Here, we're looking at not just Mediterranean diet, but also DASH diet and alternative healthy eating index based on the Harvard eating plate. So I think that's a very important message because it means that dietary patterns can be adapted to different culture and food traditions. And another important takeaway from this analysis is that it's never too late to improve your diet. So in our cohort, even for people who are in the 60s and 70s who began to adopt Mediterranean diet, they can still benefit from this improvement in diet quality in later life in terms of reducing risk of chronic disease and improved longevity. Many biological mechanisms may underline the health benefits of Mediterranean diet. We know that this kind of dietary pattern is rich in fiber, polyphenols, healthy fats, And this combination need to reduce oxidative stress, reduce inflammation, improve the insulin sensitivity. Also, high amount of fiber and polyphenols in the Mediterranean diet can improve gut microbiome diversity and improve gut microbiome composition, and that can lead to increased production of healthy microbiome-derived metabolites such as short-chain fatty acids. Advances in omics technologies have significantly accelerated new discoveries in nutritional sciences. Now we can incorporate omics technologies such as genomics, proteomics, metabolomics, and the gut microbiome analysis into large cohort studies and randomized clinical trials. And those technologies have enabled us to unravel the secrets of healthy dietary patterns like Mediterranean diet. In the last 20 years, I have had the privilege and pleasure to collaborate with many colleagues in Spain, especially Miguel Angel on the PREDIMED trial. Initially, I served as the one of the members on the Data Safety Monitoring Board in the PREDIMED trial, and later on, through several NIH grants, we measured thousands of small molecule metabolites in blood and urine samples in the PREDIMED participants. Those analyses have enabled us to better understand molecular pathways through which Mediterranean diet influence the risk of cardiometabolic diseases. This is a recent review paper led by Miguel Angel, in which we summarized the main results from the PREDIMED trial. So in this review, we identified both harmful and beneficial metabolites that influence the risk of cardiovascular disease. An important takeaway from this study, this review, is that following a healthy Mediterranean diet can actually modulate the effects of some of the harmful metabolites in blood or urine samples. One of the most important metabolites that we have identified is ceramides, which is a class of lipid metabolites which have pro-inflammatory effects, and the higher amount of ceramides in circulation are associated with increased CVD risk. An important finding from this study is that Mediterranean diet interventions actually abolished the deleterious effects of ceramide metabolites on CVD risk. As you can see here, increased ceramide metabolites is associated with increased risk of CVD only in the control group, but not in the intervention group. So the typical Western diet is associated with increased production of ceramides, and that leads to increased inflammation, mitochondrial dysfunction, and decreased metabolic flexibility. On the other hand, following a Mediterranean diet can decrease the production of ceramides, which lead to decreased chronic inflammation and the improved mitochondrial function. Using the metabolomics data from the PREDIMED trial, we developed a metabolic signature for adherence to the Mediterranean diet, comprising 67 blood metabolites. We were able to replicate this signature in our cohorts in the US, and also we found that this metabolic signature was associated with lower risk of CVD in both Spanish and the US populations. Furthermore, using genetic analysis, we were able to confirm that the association between the signature and CVD risk is likely to be causal. In this study, led by my former postdoc, Daniel Wang, who is now a faculty at Harvard Medical School, we examined the interplay between Mediterranean diet and gut microbiome. Not surprisingly, we found that adherence to Mediterranean diet improved gut microbiome composition and also diversity. I think the most important finding from this study is that not everyone responds to the Mediterranean diet equally in terms of their cardiometabolic risk. And the reason for this inter-person variability in their metabolic response is due to differences in their microbiome species, bacteria species. So I think this finding is very important for personalized nutrition or precision nutrition. It means that dietary recommendations can be tailored to individual characteristics such as their microbiome composition and their metabolic profiles. In the recent study, we evaluated the effects of improving diet fat quality and the cardiovascular risk. So in the US, I don't know whether this is true in Europe, there is still a lot of controversy about butter, whether butter is healthy or not. And some people in the US are now advocating increased consumption of butter. In this study, using data from feeding trial, we developed a lipidomics score to reflect the beneficial effects of replacing butter with olive oil. And then we applied this score to large cohort studies like the Nurses Health study and the PREDIMED trial. What we found is that this score was associated with lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease. So this study, I think, provide very strong and robust evidence that replacing butter, which is high in saturated fat, with olive oil, which is high in monounsaturated fat, is beneficial for the prevention of cardiovascular disease. There is convincing evidence that higher consumption of red meat and processed meat is associated with increased risk of diabetes and cardiovascular disease. However, we don't know which specific components of red meat contribute to this risk. In this integrated analysis of epidemiological data and the biomarker data, we identified human iron to be an independent risk factor for type 2 diabetes. So increased consumption of human iron is strongly associated with increased risk of diabetes. On the other hand, higher consumption of non-human iron, which come from plant-based foods, was not associated with diabetes risk. Furthermore, we found that higher consumption of human iron accounted for at least 50% of the association between red meat intake and the risk of type 2 diabetes. Telomere length has been widely used as an aging biomarker. So longer telomere length is associated with lower risk of chronic disease and the increased longevity, whereas shorter telomere length is associated with decreased life expectancy. So in this study conducted in the Nurses Health study cohort, we found adherence to Mediterranean diet is associated with increased telomere length. So I think this is a very important finding suggesting that Mediterranean diet has anti-aging effect because the telomere length, again, is a useful biomarker for biological aging. As all of you know, olive oil is the hallmark of the traditional Mediterranean diet. It has been known as the liquid gold since the ancient times. So those are ancient fresco or mosaic from the Roman period depict the celebration of olive tree cultivation and also olive harvest. And beyond culinary use, olive oil has deep-rooted significance in Western civilization in terms of its history, in terms of religion and the culture. So this is the oldest olive tree on the island of Crete. It's 3,000 years old. It still produces high quality olives. So olive trees are truly a gift from the Mother Nature to humanity and also to the environment, contributing to the preservation of natural resources and biodiversity. There is no question Spain is the king of olive oil production. As you can see that olive oil production in Spain exceeds any other countries. And I was told that the olive oil produced in Spain account for about half of the olive oil produced in the whole world. This is truly remarkable. Traditionally, olive oil is not part of the American diet. Olive oil consumption has been very low in the U.S. population. However, in the past 3 decades, olive oil consumption has increased dramatically in the U.S., more than 10-fold increase compared to the consumption level in the 1980s, which is truly remarkable. In our large cohort studies, we found that higher consumption of olive oil is associated with a wide range of health benefits. So we found that olive oil is associated with lower risk of cardiovascular disease, lower risk of type 2 diabetes, lower risk of total and cause-specific mortality. And also recently we found higher consumption of olive oil is associated with lower risk of dementia. So even though the consumption of olive oil in the US is still very low compared to that in Europe, higher consumption is still associated with lower risk of chronic diseases and mortality. As you know, a unique feature of extra virgin olive oil is the high amount of polyphenols. Some of the unique polyphenols include oleoropane, oleocansol, and hydroxytyrosol. And those polyphenols not just enhance the flavor and the taste of extra virgin olive oils, but also contribute to health benefit because of their antioxidant, anti-inflammatory effects. And the polyphenols in olive oils have also been found to improve gut microbiome diversity and gut microbiome composition. And those polyphenols have been found to inhibit the growth of pathogenic bacteria in the gut. And those changes in gut microbiome and the gut composition and diversity lead to reduced chronic inflammation, reduced serum IgE production, and also reduced autoimmunity. There is some evidence that the unique polyphenols in olive oil has a wide range of cardiometabolic benefits, including improved blood lipids, improved glycemic control, reduced blood pressure, decreased inflammatory biomarkers, decreased oxidative markers, improved liver function, and improved bone and joint health, and improved cognitive health. So those data are very promising. However, they are still preliminary and not conclusive, underscore the need for further studies on the potential benefits of those unique polyphenols in extra virgin olive oil on various health outcomes. In the director trial, plus trial, led by my colleague Iris Chai, Iris was a postdoc in my group 15 years ago and now professor in Israel. So in this study, we evaluated high polyphenol Mediterranean diet on aging biomarkers. So the high polyphenol Mediterranean diet is supplemented with 28 grams of walnuts every day, 3 to 4 cups of green tea, and also a mankind dark wheat shake. So mankind is aquatic plant food, which is very rich in polyphenols. It's widely consumed in Southeast Asian population. And so this high polyphenol Mediterranean diet, or you can call it Asian flavored Mediterranean diet or green Mediterranean diet, was found to significantly improve gut microbiome composition, significantly reduce visceral fat, intrahepatic fat, and also significantly slow down epigenetic clock and significantly improve brain structure and aging. In terms of brain health, the green Mediterranean diet or high polyphenol Mediterranean diet significantly attenuated age-related brain atrophy measured by hippocampal volume shrinkage. As you know, hippocampus is a very critical brain region which is involved in memory and cognition. When you get older, you will lose hippocampal volume, and it has been shown that hippocampal volume shrinkage is associated with memory loss, decreased cognitive function, and the increased risk of dementia and Alzheimer's disease. So this data, I think, provide promising evidence that following Mediterranean diet can actually slow down the aging process, reducing aging-related biomarkers. So to summarize, I think that now there is strong evidence that multiple plant-based healthy eating patterns can contribute to healthy aging. So here we have the Okinawa diet, the Mediterranean diet, and the Nordic diet. Those are more traditional diet. We also have contemporary healthy dietary patterns, such as the DASH diet, planetary health diet, and the Harvard healthy eating plate. But the evidence, I think, at this point is strongest and the most robust for the Mediterranean diet because of the randomized clinical trials and numerous observational studies and also experimental evidence. And studies have shown that adherence to Mediterranean diet and other healthy dietary patterns reduce the risk of chronic disease, reduce physical disabilities, and improve cognitive and social functioning, and improve mental health. And so in the end, we're not just talking about increasing lifespan, but also increase health span, improving the quality of life. So that's why it's very important to emphasize the role of diet, a healthy dietary pattern in improving healthy lifespan. And in terms of biological mechanisms, I briefly touched on the role of Mediterranean diet in reducing chronic inflammation, epigenetic aging, oxidative stress, mitochondrial dysfunction, telomerase length, and microbiome and metabolome. But there's still a lot to be discovered. We still have a long way to go to fully understand the biological mechanisms underlying the Mediterranean diet, to fully unlock the secrets of the traditional Mediterranean diet in improving not just human health, but the health of the planet. So before I close, I just want to thank numerous colleagues and collaborators in our large cohort study in PREDIMED, and also acknowledge the funding from NIH to support our research. So thank you very much for your attention.
Well, thank you very much. We are at almost the end of this technical session, focused on the science, on the health science of the Mediterranean diet and the cultural, social aspect too. So our last participant is Dr. Walter Willett, medicine doctor too, PhD. Walter Willett is a professor of epidemiology and nutrition at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, former chair of the Department of Nutrition at Harvard University, known for pioneering dietary methods in large cohort studies, including the Northeast Health Studies, author of over 2,000 research papers and widely cited by nutritional science. Dr. Willett is not physically today with us, but he has sent us a video. Okay, so let's go with the video of Dr. Walter Willett.
Colleagues, friends, and many people I have yet to meet. I'm sorry I'm not there in person to be part of this great celebration around the Mediterranean diet, and hopefully we'll be able to meet in person before too long. This is a great event, and maybe I'll add just a few words about where we started back in 1993 with the first Mediterranean Diet Conference. We were able to hold this with the efforts of some people who are with you, I think now, Greg Drescher, Antonio Tricopoulou, and members of the team from Old Ways Preservation Trust, including Don Gifford, who was a pioneer in emphasizing the value of traditional diets. We were privileged at that time to host Dr. Ansel Keys, who really did first shine light on the Mediterranean diet. He was, I think, 92 years of age at that time, and it was a real pleasure for all of us to meet him. He was still lively and thoughtful at that point in time. We were meeting in an era when low-fat diets were the primary recommendation of virtually all dietary guidelines, and all types of fat were being condemned, including olive oil, especially. It was very heavy. But the evidence we were seeing in our cohort studies was not suggesting that all types of fat were bad, and that plant oils, unsaturated plant oils, in general, were looking pretty healthy. There was also a big debate whether we should be eating margarine or butter. Unfortunately, olive oil came up on the scene as an alternative, which was looking a lot better than both, because butter, especially that time, we knew was bad, but margarine even worse, since it was full of trans fat then. And now we're in an era when we have so much evidence from many different places, from many different kinds of research, that the Mediterranean dietary pattern is extremely healthy, and it's not a low-fat diet. We have, of course, the evidence from the Predimed study done in Spain, and many of the investigators of that really important study are with you today. Back in 1993, we also realized that the environment was a concern. So we did have a session on that. But if I look back at it, it wasn't given the attention it really deserved. It was mostly about the extra irrigation water for producing more fruits and vegetables, and pesticides that would need to be available for increasing production of those foods. There wasn't really much about climate change, and now we realize that is a huge crisis. And one of the values of the Mediterranean diet is that we know it can be environmentally sustainable because of its relatively low animal source food consumption. And now, of course, we know that it's even more urgent that we pay attention to the environmental aspects of our diet. Right now, I'm involved with the update of the Eat Lancet Commission, and that's one of the reasons I can't be with you today. One of the concentrations, one of the focal points of the updated Eat Lancet Commission report will be on the translation of what we call a planetary health diet to different cultures, different food systems around the world. We know, fortunately, from a detailed examination of the Mediterranean diet, that we can translate that to other foods, other eating cultures, but at the same time, the Mediterranean diet does remain our guiding light. Unfortunately, there's not enough olive oil that can be produced to have everybody have that as their major source of fat in their diet. And it does look like healthy, non-trans other plant oils can be very good as well. So again, I'm sorry not to be with you today, and enjoying both the science, the company, and the good food that I know you are enjoying. Thank you.
Well, this is the end of this technical session. It has been for me a real pleasure to act as a presenter of this activity that we, the SIC, International Olive Council, and we, the Centre International d'Études Agronomiques Méditerranéennes, just to change a little bit of language, we have organized to celebrate the olive oil day. So I am going to give the floor and to invite to the stage to the director, de la Organización del Consejo Legal Internacional, don Jaime Lillo.
Of the International Olive Council, Mr. Jaime Lillo.
Thank you, Raúl, for conducting this amazing morning of speakers. Well, it's not easy to make a closing remarks after such people talking to the audience, but I just wanted to share with you that I hope you will enjoy this celebration as much as I did and find it inspiring, learning from first hand about the discovering of the Mediterranean diet. I see those pictures of 5,000 years ago of olives and people collecting the trees from Mount Tonia, and then how from there the story of how come to the recognition and fight against this idea of low fat is better for your health, and then discover now it's about the quality of the fat you are putting in your diet, and then the amount of evidence that Professor Martinez and told us since this publication, how much evidence so many quotes, no, of this morning that I will have to elaborate, but yeah, this liquid of life that Antonio said, no, because we used to say gold. No, life is much more interesting than gold, no? And many other reflections, and yeah, listening to Professor Frank Hu trying to get into not only we know that it's healthy, but why it's healthy, and all of these interactions that and so many things we still to learn. We learn that we are not late to improve our diet, and we hope that all together we are getting the idea to underline the importance of the Mediterranean diet. And I think the last wordings, well, before the last wordings also, I like the appreciation that this is not food. This is not something that we take because we need to be healthy. We enjoy life. I think that is very important. We enjoy our food, and this is part of the life. And it's not only improving our health, it's improving our quality of life. And just to conclude, the last message of Professor Willett, linking not only, he says, we know with evidence that it's extremely healthy, but we also know more and more that it's sustainable, and it has a guide to reflect on what is going to be this planetary diet to face the challenge of feeding the growing population in a healthy manner and healthy for the planet as well. And that's why he was busy, and to know that all of this work is still alive, is present, is future. And also Professor Hu was presenting this evolution of the consumption in the United States. And I wonder how much this is related to the recognition of the Mediterranean diet and the health benefits of its products and the olive oil. So I think for all of us here in the room, we are connected to the producing countries, associations, institutions. We all work with olive oil, with table olives, with Mediterranean diet. And I think it's good to acknowledge the contribution of science to the world to make their choices when they're going to eat healthy. And we know there's more and more people willing to eat healthy and sustainable and take those decisions based on science. I think is give us a lot of hope for the future. And just to conclude, this idea from Mr. Willett that he says unfortunate we don't have enough olive oil to feed the population. This is part of our challenge to make it bigger, to make it more available to contribute to the health of the world, and make it also making the sustainable living of the farmers and the territories behind the product. So thank you all for your day today, and I hope we can continue to disseminate all of this idea. Thank you very much, and please, again, for the speakers and for all those institutions participating with us, CIAM, CSIC, and all the speakers, big applause. Okay, I think before we pass to the little to enjoy the oils, I would like to invite Vice Minister Burumandi from Iran, and we're gonna celebrate the recognition of the international collection of olive trees. It's another issue, but genetics in the olive trees is part of the solution for the challenges of climate change and others. And in Iran, they get the recognition of international collection, and I will be honored to give the certification to the Vice Minister. It will take just a minute. Thank you very much. Let's try some oils.
Recording stopped.